straight into this. What was that experience like? Geeta and then Anjana. What was this experience like? This Catherine
Hall.
Catherine Hall. So tell me, what was it like?
So it's called Ekaterina Hall, and I'll start with with where we are standing right now, Gaurav, because when we went for the recce and we were looking at all these places, you see on the left-hand side where the curtains are, is exactly where a carpet is laid and a table and chairs are put, and that's where most of the interviews happen, including Tucker Carlson's interview. That was where it happens. And then our team went in, and our group managing editor, production, Samakya, was leading the entire production of this interview. So he went there and he saw the statue, and he went up to the press, assistant press secretary, and he said, can we get this? And he was talking to me, and we said, you know, they want that statue as the backdrop. Lo and behold, it symbolizes a lot.
Yes.
It's a female warrior symbolizing Russia, two women journalists interviewing Putin. It just fell in place in terms of symbolism. But we didn't know it then. He just wanted the statue. And so then he pushed for it, and we got it. They were professional. They agreed to things. They said, it's your interview. And then later he said, this is the first interview that's not taking place where it normally does. This is the first time this statue is the backdrop of an interview.
Anjana, what was that experience like for you to be at Kremlin, to interview President Putin? And you knew every word that he'd say, the whole world was watching.
Absolutely, and that is how we opened the entire interview, talking about two old friends who were meeting, and probably they would share a lot of warmth and everybody would be, uncomfortable about it. But the best thing was that we were interviewing him before his India visit. So Gaurav, this experience is actually unmatched. It's like, I mean, I'm still, trying to relive a lot of those moments, because every time we would reach a historic place, I would tell those guys who were escorting us around, let me soak this in, let me soak this in, let me take this in. You're in Kremlin. And the point is that what we need to understand, Gaurav, is that a lot of mystery and enigma has been built around Vladimir Putin.
Oh, absolutely.
He has been portrayed by the Western media like a bloodthirsty czar kind of a person who wants to build his empire again. See, the Russia-Ukraine war has to be seen in perspective. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sat next to him and said, we are not neutral, we want peace. So India's stand is absolutely clear on that, and that is what all of us think. But I do feel that, he's been portrayed in a certain way that Kremlin is something that nobody can pierce through, nobody can go inside.
Behind the Iron Curtain.
No, we were told we could shoot inside.
And
we were told, Geeta, that we could shoot inside. So they were okay with it. Like, there were some parts like where his house was, because that's super high security. Otherwise, important parts where there were many...
In fact, the second time when we were there, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, they were holding a meeting with Putin a few rooms away.
We were right there. And everything was just happening in front of our eyes. The three best important takeaways for me from this interview. Number one, Kremlin has always been portrayed as this massive iron curtain that you talked about, everything hidden, nothing comes out, no cameras allowed. That entire, you can say, that image absolutely broke. Absolutely broke for me.
It's like KGB agents everywhere.
I was walking in every day, 3 days.
Maybe they're there, but at least they were not stifling us.
Okay.
3 days, like continuously. And then at the end of it, I told those guys that, I mean, you can give us a place to live here now, till you don't give us the interview. So it was that nice. His team was so perfect, immaculate with all their arrangements. There would be a person waiting for us outside Lenin Library and this entire Kremlin place. They would escort us in a car, get all our cars checked and our passports checked, equipment checked. And even the RT-PCRs or all the tests that were done, because we were sitting in very close vicinity with the president, everything was done, everything was arranged by them. They were very forthcoming, and they were also looking forward to this interview, which makes me come to the point that Russia also values, and in these times, they also need India. And if he openly said that I want to bring an import-expo there and try and tell my people what they can buy from India, so he was actually trying to hit certain notes. That, you need jobs,
that interview
you
with
need
India
business,
today,
you need jobs, we're here.
And at least with India Today, he knew there was no agenda that was being peddled.
Yes.
There were no half-truths or
Look at his
absolute
body
lies like the
language.
West.
Gaurav, he was so
Also-
relaxed.
Yeah.
Also,
Geeta.
also a no holds barred interview.
No holds barred.
We
They
were
didn't
not
ask you for
told-
questions.
No.
They didn't.
They asked us for broad areas because the president has to be prepared. In fact, after his meetings got over, Gaurav, we were told that all his engagements are over, and now he's going to just get briefed and prepare himself ahead of the interview. And that was about 3 hours from when the interview actually started. That's how prepared he came. Without the questions, just the fact that we gave them broad areas. When we were discussing, we said, okay, do you want specific areas? They said, no, we do not want. We just want, we don't want specifics. You can ask him whatever you want to. We just want areas so that he knows what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And within that realm, he'll answer whatever. So it was a no-holds-barred interview, truly so.
And the translation, because your questions were in English and in
Real
Hindi,
time.
real time.
Real time.
That was a first for us.
Fantastic.
It was a first for me. It was very, very easy. It was, but you had to concentrate a lot. You had to, because there were times
Because you picked up our questions from his answers.
When we are like that, you know, like somebody's saying something and we have 10 questions in our mind.
Yeah.
So when he said Witkoff, I was talking to Witkoff in the other room. I said, you weren't talking just to Witkoff, there were two of them. Mr. Jared Kushner as well.
Yeah.
So he says, two
yeah.
versus one. So, and you know, somehow that symphony fell in
because
place.
we said, you know, and again, you know, if we talk about takeaways, sense of humor. I asked him about his meeting with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, and I said, I'd love to be a fly on the wall, given that that's my beat. He said, oh, well, you wouldn't have wanted to. It was rather boring. 5 hours, I was bored.
Imagine for a president to say that. I mean,
But that's the closest he ever got to saying something which could land him in a problem with US. Otherwise, he was very careful. He was very careful, is my reading.
Yeah.
But and he's supremely confident. He knows what he wants to say, Anjana. He wants to, you know, what he wants to convey, and he has an end game in mind.
Three points which will convince you about this. When I asked him about that energy thing, he was very clear. He said, US is buying nuclear energy from us, and they want to tell you not to buy oil.
About hypocrisy, oil.
Second, I don't want to go to G8. We've looked at each other like, you don't want to enter G8?
Because
he said no.
Those were the reports. See, everything is about reports, and we were debunking those reports, which is why international media, including CNN, said there's a lot to learn from the India Today interview. Because you keep putting these, you know, articles out about how Putin is pushing for G8, and when I asked him, he said no.
He said no, I don't want to. And the third thing that I was talking about, so these 2 points where his sense of clarity on issues was very clear. The other was USSR. When we categorically asked him, she asked him about reintegration.
No, she asked him about disintegration, and he had a perfect answer for that. And then I said, what about reintegration? Because that also media keeps citing, and a lot of European countries say, oh, we are next. If it's Ukraine, we are next. He said, I have no such interest because it will change how the composition of Russia culturally and religiously.
That's again something very important. You know, he's big on history, on civilization, and he sees himself quite like Prime Minister Narendra Modi as somebody who's there to bring about a change for the betterment of his country.
Well, he does think Russia is foremost when it comes to how he's thinking, decisions he's taking, and policies he's making. He's doing what he thinks is right for his country, and which is why when we were asking him questions, he focused on strategic autonomy.
Yes, he did.
Something that India keeps talking about, Gaurav.
And he respects Prime Minister Narendra Modi for that, Anjana.
Oh, he was slipping in this every little opportunity that he had. He would slip in the Indian growth story. He was like, this is not the India of the 70s. So I think whatever time he took to concentrate on the interview, he put all that focus on how to describe India, the India that exists today. So that was very interesting. He would talk about Narendra Modi all the time. Like, my question was, how do you characterize Trump? He said, I do not want to characterize a colleague. But when it came to Prime Minister Modi, he was just so enamored by him, and probably also because he values this relationship a lot.
And
I mean, imagine 100 minutes of an interview. Who's doing this? He did it because it's not that something happened suddenly. It's because the Russian president has a clear view about India. He wants to penetrate every Indian household. And he knows that the Aaj Tak India Today group can do it. He picks on us, and then we are there in front of him. And he gives us like she's saying, no holds barred interview, and he's so relaxed. Look at him.
Yeah.
You talk to him about his KGB days. I asked him. She asked him which CIA or K, and I'm getting the maximum responses on these questions. People are like,
and Mossad. I mean, you know, my
he mentioned it himself.
He mentioned Mossad.
So it was absolutely. I think 2 things this will do for Putin as well. It is big for us. And it also puts Indian media on a very important platform in the world. Yeah. And all this Western media that has dominated the entire narrative for years and years, we've, kind of put forth.
We bring out facts and only facts. And you asked him tough questions, both of you. You didn't spare him on questions that the world would want answers to. The Russian origin people in Ukraine.
Russian-speaking people, Russian origin.
And what he had said on Kyiv, I said, you've said it's the mother of all Russian cities. So what did you mean by that? But the best thing is that what it will do for Putin is that the maximum reviews I'm getting now is that in this conversation, a leader and a man came across to them. They're thinking ki, oh, aise baat karta hai. He shakes hands with people. He talks to people. He's so relaxed with you.
In fact, the BTS was very interesting.
What Anjana was saying when she spoke about, this interview, why was it important to give it to an Indian network? And why is it important that India Today got it, Gaurav? Is because it's not just penetrating every Indian home. It's about telling the world that we do not need Western media to sound legitimate and credible.
Yeah,
that
we don't crave legitimacy.
No, I'm talking about Russia. That they can give it to an Indian network and be heard everywhere in the world.
True.
So we have made a mark where we did not focus just on India. We focused on every question that concerns Russia when it comes to the world. We asked him tough questions on Trump. We asked him about Russia, Ukraine. We asked him about Gaza. We asked him about Israel, Palestine,
AI, Gen
Iran, Gen Z, the Gen Z
Taliban,
protests.
Afghanistan. No, but let me...
Recognizing the Taliban.
Geeta, let's do something else now. Let's ask Gaurav what was his favorite part of the interview. What was your favorite part of the interview?
What was your favorite part, Gaurav?
Every bit of it. In fact, I had the privilege of listening to it, the whole thing, including the conversation later that happened. And considering I've reported both from Russia and from Ukraine, like you, during the conflict and after that, I know where he's coming from and where he's trying to get at. The West may not understand, and especially when he says what he said on Donbass. And that's where I wanted both of you to respond. Such clarity of thought that when the war started, or the special operations as he puts it, Donbass is something that he wanted. Donetsk and Luhansk. No getting rid of that.
No,
and you've reported from
Crimea.
there. On either side, by the way.
And Crimea.
Yeah.
And Crimea.
Donetsk, Luhansk and Crimea. Because
Crimea goes without saying. There is no way would he have ceded that.
It was jointly operated, right? He said, but to the word annexation, he said, no, we didn't annex it. It was ours.
It was ours
we are just saying, we are just claiming it completely is because there is a threat to Russian national security. And Crimea is the only warm water port that Russia has. So, absolute clarity.
I think the interesting part of this entire interview prep was also, Gaurav, that I and Geeta were, very clear that we want proper symphony between us, a flow of questions, but we had also prepared in anticipation of what he would answer. So we were like, which parts are you, what are the red lines? So we were clear that he's going to try and evade such questions maybe.
Did he?
So I think he evaded the China-India question quite smartly.
A little careful. I think he answered, but he was careful.
See, when he talks about nuclear energy,
in fact, he did not evade, Anjana. He said a very important thing there to you. He said that I see that they both are making an effort and there is intent to resolve. He sees it that way. Because also there must be...
Why I say he evaded that question is because my question was not in the context of Russia interfering in the Indo-China, whatever differences we have.
How do you see it?
My question was that you want RIC. You are saying you don't want to go to G8, but you went to China, and now you're coming to India. You obviously want RIC to be together. But if these two need to be together, then there needs to be some kind of
peace at the borders.
And then you are always walking on tightrope because you have to balance the two. You went to China, now you're coming to India. Also to ensure that the Chinese hegemony that's happening in the Russian market today has to somehow be balanced. How are you balancing India and China? That was my question.
I know, but
he took it away from there.
But if you would have said anything, that would have been interference.
Yeah.
You're getting it in diplomacy. If you would have said anything, that would have been interference.
He could have said that I give
that you guys decide.
No, Geeta. So the answer could have been, I'm just assuming, could have been the Chinese and the Chinese people are equally important for me, but keeping this relationship with India is also very important. They're equally important. He didn't want to say that. Equally, or words like that, or I value this and I value this more. He didn't want to say that. He said that they have to sort their differences. We will work together.
And in your view, Geeta, his love for India and for Prime Minister, his affection for Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes out very naturally, because I was just watching, he was talking about yoga, he was talking about Raj Kapoor just a moment ago.
Yeah, RT.
Yeah, so all that comes very naturally to him.
It does. He has engaged India through prime ministers, through through governments, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been at the helm of affairs at a time that has been most difficult, turbulent, and testing times for Russia. And India stood by Russia come what may. In fact, if these visuals, not the ones that you're seeing because that is us, but if the visuals of Modi and Putin are to be seen closely,
just
it just spells out
okay.
defiance.
This woman that you're seeing right now,
yes,
she was one of our translators.
Oh, I thought she was one of the security,
No. So this girl, she was one of our translators, and you will see the other one in the informal conversation where this other gentleman who was part of all the translation when we were, like having an informal interaction. But you'll see that girl right now. This girl.
Yeah.
She was our English woman translator. So
They're
what
the
used to happen?
interpreters,
20
yes.
minutes.
Yes.
20 minutes of interpreters.
Yes.
Like,
oh yeah, because they have to concentrate so much
No, and
on
because
every
they have
word.
to write also.
And they write.
Then they write, and they're real-time writing, doing it. So they take 20 minutes, they take turns.
Great.
They take
Amazing.
turns.
In fact, Geeta, tell him about what they told us. That don't be surprised if you get a man's voice in your ear and then suddenly there's a woman
And
speaking.
then they prepared us, because then they came, the two officers came, and this lady officer and the other gentleman, and they introduced themselves. Then they practiced with us. We did a
diction,
real-time...
pronunciation.
and also real-time. Real-time, how will it sound? Because for Anjana, it's the first time that she's doing an interpreter.
Yeah.
So they practiced with us.
Wow.
Where somebody was sitting, answering our questions, and we were getting it. We were getting the interpretation so that we were completely prepared before we go into that interview with the president.
Amazing. Amazing. And on that question, if I may, because Anjana, I want to come back to the question on Ukraine. The whole world wants an answer to what next in Ukraine. Yeah. America wanted an answer. Absolutely. And his thinking is very clear in that conversation with you, absolutely. Even off the record.
Absolutely. I think off the record, we didn't talk much about Russia, Ukraine. But I think in that very answer, his stand was very, very clear. He's there and he's still there. He's not coming back.
No, in fact, those lines seem to be advancing. The manner in which the Ukrainians...
And even when she mentioned the port of Crimea, she talked about Crimea. Yeah. So what happens is, when you finish your question, and even on the way, that live translator is happening. Yeah. So when he heard Crimea, and she said that about this, I heard him laugh midway in hearing to that question. So this man is absolutely
also
clear.
Because he understands English.
Yes, he does.
He just does not speak it. He understands English completely.
But even in the off-record conversation, he wanted a translator. Because probably, see, like a little thing happened. We were talking about some other gentleman. And initially we thought he's saying that he's not sharp. So 3 or 4 of us started laughing.
Then he corrected. He realized that we didn't get it. He said, no. What did you ask? I am saying he is sharp.
So, the point is that there is scope for a little misunderstanding.
Who you're talking about.
No, don't.
And
no, you assume all you want.
You assume.
Yeah. No, and the fact he is where he is and finding the way for peace shows he's sharp.
He is very sharp.
Yeah.
On Ukraine, he made it very clear on Steve Witkoff, because that also made headlines all through Western networks. They're very focused on Russia, Ukraine. He said that I asked him 28-point peace proposal. Is it out of the table, out of the window, off the table? He said, no, it's on the table. It's just now 4 packages. He didn't elaborate on what those 4 packages are, but they really, which he also hinted at one thing. He said, I see intent when it comes to Donald Trump wanting peace, but I also see economic interests.
Oh, absolutely. Reconstruction would have a lot of oil, rare earth, gas.
Rare earth in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's already a
deal that's happened behind the scenes. So, okay, so we've digressed a bit. Let me come back to the interview. There are many who see him as the new Tsar of Russia. Did you get that impression, either of you, Anjana and Geeta?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that is where I began, because all this narrative that has been built around him, he's very warm. He's very warm. Like, we were, apprehensive if we should be shaking hands, because obviously, I mean, we have to wait for him to take that this thing. And he came forth like this, and then he's smiling, he's laughing all through the interview.
Yeah.
He's smiling, and I'm like, okay, I'm asking questions on March 8, 2014. You were addressing the Federation Council, and you said Kyiv is the mother of all Russian cities. What did you mean? Smiling, and then he's answering, and then he's waiting for the next one. So he was very engaging. So I think this entire thing...
And historically, Kiev, Russians hold Kiev in so much respect, the Orthodox Church. But he also mentioned in that response to you that what they're doing to Orthodox Church is not correct.
Because now it's
correct.
separate.
Yeah.
The Orthodox Church in Russia is absolutely separate from the one in Kiev, whereas it was Kiev held the key.
Absolutely. We've been there, incidentally, we went there together. It's beautiful. You have to see it to believe it. And I mean, if this war wasn't there, Russia and Ukraine together as friends are a great part of the world to be in.
He's just saying that. If there's no NATO threat, we're great. I don't want NATO in my backyard, as America did not want, and that's me, not him, saying, as America did not want Russia in their backyard during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Gaurav.
Yep.
So there's clarity in what the West is trying to do and what the West wants to do, to which I said, Zelensky, was NATO ever on the table? He said, you ask that gentleman, because he's the one who promised all this. He's the one who is responsible now for what is happening in Ukraine. And he went on to actually call him a neo-Nazi. I think there has to be a realization. But he also offered peace through negotiations, which is also rare, because for the longest they did not want to negotiate with Ukraine. Now they're saying, come to the negotiating table. Very, very interesting.
Okay. And your impression, Anjana, that one, he's supremely confident. He's all there. He's, despite being one of the most powerful men in the world, Anjana, he's very careful in what he says, let's say about Donald Trump or Prime Minister Modi or any other world leader.
Exactly. So, in fact, as soon as the interview was over and we were having this little conversation, he actually said that you were trying to get me there so that I would say something, but I did not. You know what we're talking about. So, I assess him as a politician who does not fear the West. Russia stepped into this century with him. He has been at the top for a quarter of a century. But at the same time, this man is not going to stoop to the level of some other politicians who name people, who abuse people openly. He was very categoric. Like, he had to say, you're buying nuclear energy and you want to stop India. I don't want to be part of G8. So these things were coming. So that showed clearly that he doesn't fear the West. But he did not want to name and shame anyone individually. So I think a very mature leader who knows that when he talks or when he speaks, a country and its people are at stake. So you have to be careful about what you're saying. He knows that responsibility. So I think you have to give it to him that in spite of the fact that he's probably, one of the most influential and like the most powerful nation's head, he was very clear that I will not misuse my this thing to slightly talk about anyone, be it anyone.
I think kind of old school.
Yeah.
25
which
years.
Is nice, which is pleasant, right?
Yeah, 25 years. But congratulations once again, Geeta and Anjana, for this brilliant scoop. And this is something that we'll be talking about. We'll all be talking about for such a long time. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Gaurav, for having us.
Yes. Great scoop my colleagues had. I now want to throw this open for a wider discussion with our guests who are joining us on this broadcast. Also, the key takeaways from the discussions and deliberations that happened today. So, Prime Minister Narendra Modi described this relationship as the pole star. Dhruv Tara guiding the way through thick and thin. So, what should one make of the outcomes of the meetings today? Now, joining me on India first is Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief of Western Naval Command. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti is former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. Again, somebody who looks at India-Russia relationship and India-Europe very closely. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar joins me on the show. Ambassador Sajjanhar was posted as an ambassador to Kazakhstan, somebody who's looking at the trade, was looking at the trade deals with the region very closely. And Ambassador Sajjanhar, is a new world order emerging, challenging the Europe-centric discourse and approach and decision-making? What did you make of President Putin's visit to India and his interactions with Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
Yes, thank you very much, Gaurav, for having me. The world order is definitely changing. Which way it is going, I think it is still very unclear. So, meaning if I were to say that a new world order is emerging, then possibly I would also need to identify what are the contours of that world order. So yes, things are changing. There is definitely in terms of
Okay, so give me a moment as we reestablish this
movement.
link with you. Ambassador Chakravarti, is the US seeking peace? Is Russia also looking for an off-ramp when it comes to this conflict with Ukraine? And as some European countries egging Ukraine on to fight, how do you see the equations right now? You've had world leaders engaging Russia. At the same time, is Europe being left out?
Look, I think each country and what you mentioned, Europe, not a country, but a grouping, they're all looking at their own, interests, really. And so I feel that all this will be ultimately lead to some balancing of foreign policy goals of each of these entities. And I think India and Russia are clearly showing the way that they are not going to sit back and accept the dictates of various countries like the US or the Europeans and others. The Europeans actually are in a little bit of a tight corner because they don't know where exactly to, because Trump has turned against them, because Trump is now pushing for peace. Well, the Europeans do not want peace. So I cannot understand why the Europeans are doing this. Either it is some historical hatred for Russia or the fear of Russia. Something is driving the Europeans to take this position, or they see this war as a good opportunity for their defense industries, which, as we normally used to say, that America needs a war to make its military-industrial complex thrive and profit. But this time, I think Trump really wants to pull back and get some peace deal going.
Okay.
Whereas Zelensky is not willing, and the Europeans are egging him on. So this is the kind of peculiar situation we are in. But whatever it is, India and Russia have gone ahead with their relationship.
So India and Russia want to move ahead, but, do we risk additional sanctions if we increase our partnership with Russia beyond, what it is? So, Ambassador, let me bring in Admiral Shekhar Sinha into this conversation. Admiral Sinha, do we risk additional sanctions if we improve economic ties with Russia? Or, in your view, has the US seen the futility of its actions? This visit, if you notice, on defense, it was relatively low-key. There was more on opening of Russian markets for Indian goods and services, space or energy, including the small modular reactors.
Thank you, Gaurav, for getting me on your program. I quite agree with what Ambassador Pinak just mentioned. The Americans should get a message. If they don't, and if they put more sanctions, actually speaking, it doesn't matter to India now. It really doesn't matter. Because if it is a sanction between two of them, they would have already discussed the, this rupee-ruble trade, or is there a third party from which maybe a dirham from UAE or something? And I think that something is cooking, and that's good for the, having a multipolarity in the world. First thing is currency, I would guess. Like you rightly said, that there's nothing in the open domain that what has happened in the defense collaboration. But mind you, there are a lot of indirect or rather dual-use technologies where defense is very much there. For example, space. We need to launch many more satellites to get, equal with the Chinese. We may not get equal, but we should be able to deter the Chinese from destroying our
Sure.
satellites. That's number one. There has been some on the artificial intelligence and cyber security. The Russians are very good in cyber. As you know, the Americans keep complaining that the Russians have jammed their so and so circuit and they have gone over and done that. So I think that the threat of sanction, to my mind, it really doesn't matter. Though the fact is that the Reliance industry has reduced the import of oil from Russia, and there are already, if I recall, the CMD of the chairman of the Reliance industry was in Saudi Arabia about 2 weeks back, and I'm sure he would have met, the Mohammed bin Salman, and they would have had some talk. The talk that I can think of, well, he can buy a share in their petrol company, and if he buys a share, then it's legal to take things at a price what they would give to companies.
But the way the MOUs were signed today, Ambassador Sajjanhar, the number of MOUs that were inked, when we're looking at greater access to Russian market for our pharmaceuticals, for labor movement, when you talk about deepening ties, raising it to $100 billion by 2030, and Prime Minister was hopeful it could happen way before 2030. Looking at the conference, okay, give me a moment. I want to show you those images, and these are live images of that state dinner at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. President Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi with him, the Vice President on the other side, and President Draupadi Murmu is reading the welcome, and Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, the Russian Finance Minister, then I can see Kirti Vardhan Singh, Minister of State for External Affairs, the Vice President on the other side of President Putin, Dmitry Peskov on the other, to his side, the Russian Finance Minister, the Russian Defense Minister, the Russian Health Minister, also seen in these images. Okay, and I can also see Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in this in these images. I don't know if we have audio to that, and we're getting these images courtesy RT India. RT, incidentally, is the Russian channel that has just launched in India, and Russian President Vladimir Putin was just there at the launch of RT. This again is one way of for the world to know the Russian perspective through India. And let's try and listen in. Let's see if there's an audio link to that. So shortly, hopefully, we will get you more on that. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, if I could come back to you. If we were to increase our bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030, or as the Prime Minister said even before that, do we risk additional sanctions if the Russia-Ukraine war is not sorted out quickly?
Well, thank you very much, Gaurav, for having me on the show, and my apologies that the connection didn't work earlier. No, I don't think we can have, any fear of any sanctions. $100 billion is not all that huge an amount. I think for our own bilateral purposes, we'll really have to see that it is, what is the composition of the trade, that it is not heavily weighted against us, that the trade deficit that we have at the moment, about $60 billion out of a total trade of about $68.7 billion. That's not sustainable. And, for two strategic partners, special privileged partnership, etc., it doesn't work. So, it has. But that having been said, I think what I could sense from the meetings and from the pronouncements, and also what Mr. Putin said in the interview that he gave to your two colleagues, Geeta and Anjana, that there is determination on both sides to
Yes.
enhance this partnership, because we've been talking about defense, we've been talking about oil, we've been talking about nuclear energy. These are the three pillars. And, it is dismal if you take out the oil component and the fertilizer component. The total
Yes.
trade is just about $10 billion, meaning I have served in Moscow on two
Yes.
occasions. We have always worked towards increasing that trade. And, the target was $30 billion by 2025. Now we have $69 billion, but it's heavily weighted against us. As I said, it's not sustainable. Both of them have now determined what are the items that can be exported, additional items that can be exported from India and
Okay.
there is also the free trade agreement between India and the Eurasian Economic Union. I think that could also serve as a game changer.
Ambassador Chakravarti, while there was conversation, since Ambassador Sajjan had also mentioned that exclusive interview to India today, President Putin, in a way, exposed the hypocrisy of the West and especially United States of America when he said they continue to buy uranium from Russia, they continue to buy fertilizers and yet impose additional penalty and tariffs on India. Do you see forward movement on that? How would the West be viewing this bonhomie between India and Russia? Will America double down? Or in your view, would they systematically want to perhaps backtrack and bring the India-US relationship on an even keel?
Well, I think, as you said, it won't go down very well because they don't like what's happening because they think India should not get close to Russia. But that's their view, and we have our own view. And you are talking about more sanctions. I don't know whether they will come or not. If they come, then I think Indo-US relations will slide further. And we will have to then look at other markets as we are doing now. The Eurasian one mentioned by Ashok is another one that if we can get that going, then we'll have more markets coming. And my understanding is that even some of the exports which were hit very hard by the additional sanctions imposed by Trump, they seem to be recovering because other markets are coming up. And Russia obviously...
In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi specifically mentioned dairy and fisheries in context of Russia with that MOU, sir.
Exactly. So Russia is a big market. And I think if we can divert some of those exports to Russia, and Russia needs some of these consumer items which they buy from elsewhere. If we have to be competitive, of course. And then I think, and some non-tariff barriers are there which need to be removed. And also the transportation to Russia is a little expensive. So we need to start connectivity, which we are doing from Chennai and other places. So these are some of the things that we need to plan, and it is being planned, and put it into practice.
And Admiral Sinha, your assessment of the significance of the MOU on shipbuilding, that's something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been big on, and the navigation of Arctic waters, polar waters skilling. If that starts happening now, how soon do we see an impact? The icebreakers, are we getting in to that region which will be desperately needed perhaps 10 to 20 years from now or even sooner? Sir, request you to unmute yourself.
Shipbuilding is it's a very good move because if you see the Sagarmala project, there has been approval already given to make two shipyards, one on the east coast and one on the west coast, and that the government is going to invest a lot of money. So the Russian shipbuilders, if they come and tie up with any of our shipbuilders, so that's going to be a good move. But I would think, but that only going to increase the trade deficit. So what I would believe that India should invest, in companies together with the Russians in Russia, which will give you a little more outing of your own money, and you'll reduce the little bit of deficit. So I wouldn't be surprised that if the shipbuilding company is actually in Russia, and with the Indian partnership and India investing some money there in FDI, and that ship should be building for both India and Russia. The second one that you talked about, the Arctic navigation, no, there is no hurry, but you never know the manner in which the world is changing. Tomorrow this might be a better route to send your shall I say this,
goods to the west. Yeah.
To the Atlantic, and countries very close to Atlantic, the European Union, etc., with whom our trade is improving. But more importantly, it is getting a little bit, shall I say, weaponized. Arctic is getting weaponized a little bit.
Yes.
And you see that if there is a talk of sending some American troops and some nuclear weapons on the in Finland.
I think we're getting the first image. Of the gifts that are being presented, and if I can read that correctly, that's Assam tea that has been presented, and I would ask our producers to give us more details on some of the gifts that have been exchanged and presented to the Russian president from the Indian side. Let me get you more on that in just a moment. So this is fine Assam black tea. Tea grown in the fertile Brahmaputra plains, prized for its robust flavor, bright liquor, and traditional processing. Also, the recognized GI tag in 2007. So there's Assam tea that's been presented. There's on its silver tea set. This is from Murshidabad, a silver tea set, intricately carved. This again is one of the presents. And incidentally, in both societies, Russia and India, tea is a symbol of warmth, connection, and shared stories. Admiral Sinha, you've been to Russia so many times, as has Ambassador Chakravarti and Ambassador Sajanhar. The tea ceremony is huge, the bread and tea ceremony.
But that's true. You're right. I mean, tea is really considered, it's just like having kahwa when you go to the West Asian countries. They begin with kahwa and they end with kahwa, or cafe as they call it. So the very similar thing here in Russia. You start, if you're not at a dinner banquet, you start with tea and the tea just carries on. Tea never seems to finish on the side table. So
give me a moment, let's listen into President Putin.
Creating its own future.
Помогали в создании крупных объектов промышленности, энергетики, инфраструктуры, в развитии космической программы.
They help construct major infrastructural and energy sites and the development of the space program.
Именно в декабре 15 лет назад было принято совместное заявление, которое ознаменовало выход наших межгосударственных отношений на новый, еще более продвинутый уровень особо привилегированного стратегического партнерства.
15 years ago, we signed a very important declaration that elevated our relations to a new level, the level of the specially privileged strategic partnership.
И это стратегическое партнерство успешно развивается на принципах равноправия, взаимного уважения и учета интересов друг друга.
And this partnership is developing based on the principles of equality, respect and mutual consideration of our interests.
Наполняется все новым, обоюдовыгодным содержанием.
And it is getting substantiated even more.
Наши переговоры с индийскими друзьями вчера и сегодня отличала по-настоящему открытая и конструктивная атмосфера.
Our talks with our Indian friends yesterday and today were genuinely open and constructive.
В принятом итоговом программном заявлении намечены масштабные планы сотрудничества на перспективу в политике и безопасности, экономике и финансах, транспорте, энергетике, образовании и культуре.
The declaration that we have adopted encompasses a wide area of cooperation in different spheres such as the politics, security, economy and trade, energy, education and other spheres.
Уверен, что этот документ и другие достигнутые значительные договоренности придадут серьезный импульс развитию двусторонних связей.
I am sure that this declaration, along with the other document, will give a strong push to the development of our bilateral relations.
Не менее важно и то, что Россия и Индия работают рука об руку в целях установления справедливого многополярного мироустройства.
It is as important to mention that Russia and India are working together to establish a more fair and just world order.
По нашему твердому убеждению, оно должно опираться на центральную роль Организации Объединенных Наций.
We are convinced that it should be based on the central role of the United Nations
Выверенный баланс интересов всех участников мирового сообщества.
and the balance of interests of all the members of the international community.
Совместно с индийскими друзьями координируем работу в рамках БРИКС.
Very significant what President Putin is saying. And there's one message that goes out very clearly. Both India and Russia have chosen strategic autonomy over being dictated to by either European countries or the United States of America. And we will continue to track developments on this story very, very closely. Two strong leaders together. What will this dosti lead to? We'll track that story very carefully and closely. Many thanks for watching.